All right, Craven. It is time to take a look at the hot seat meter. And basically what I did here was I gave you categories to drop coaches into, and you're the one that has the brains behind this. So we can pull this up here. This is kind of a look at the hot seat meter. You've got cold, room temperature, warm, and then who is on the hot seat. So we'll start off with our cold category here.
Yeah, so for me, it was obviously the new guys, right, are cold, right? You got Rhett Lashley, SMU, Sonny Dykes, TCU, Joey McGuire, Texas Tech. Those guys are going to be given at least a year. You know, like, I know college football has gotten crazy, but
something would have to go terribly wrong.
Yeah, like something off the field would have to happen for that, right? Dana Dimel just took UTEP to its first bowl game in almost a decade. They have a really good team back. Jimbo Fisher just signed the best recruiting class of the modern era. Dave Aranda won the Big 12. Jeff Traylor wins Conference USA. Dana Holgerson goes to the American. So really, if you look at it, 8 of the 12 FBS programs in the state are pretty secure at their head coaching job, either because of success over the last couple of years or because of new blood coming in those jobs again that first kind of mercy year. So a good. Like, just looking at it is, like, good for me. There's not going to be much turnover. It's like, okay, these 8 guys I feel like are going to be there, for at least a couple of more years. And so, it'll be interesting to me to see kind of those first-year guys who kind of emerges to the top as maybe the safest or has the best, quote-unquote rookie year.
Right, yeah, you want to stay in that cold category. And it's funny because we've done, viewers of this show who watch it notoriously know that we've done this segment before. We did this segment last year with even the same graphics, and so it was funny for me to get to go, one, the transition of Sonny Dykes from TCU, it was like, oh, I can leave the name the same. I just got to switch which logo it's next to. But when we did this the last time, there were a lot more coaches on the hot seat, specifically Dana Dimel was on the hot seat when we looked at it last year because it was like, okay, he was going into his 4th year at UTEP.
Yep.
And so if you don't do anything at that point, how long is the leniency there? Is Mike Bloomgren at Rice kind of in the same thing? So Dana Dimel moving him all the way from the hot seat down to cold just with one season was something that stuck out to me.
Yeah, it's amazing. You go to a bowl game, right?
Yep.
You and honestly, when I was at El Paso last season, I thought it was interesting. I talked to the AD and to Dimel, and Dimel told me when he was taking the job, interviewing the job, he told Jim Center, the athletic director, "Don't come bother me about results until the 4th year."
Huh.
So y'all were dead on. He was kind of entering that, this is the year.
Yeah, and that's a thing that you set for yourself. Yeah.
Right. He's like, well, because they had gone winless the year before he got there, and it was like, this isn't going to happen in a year or two. This is UTEP, right? I'm going to need a couple of years to do this. And so kudos to kind of UTEP for giving, those kind of years of hey, we're going to have some growing pains here. And then good on Dimel for kind of knowing what year in his process is kind of the show me year. He thought it would be year 4, and it ended up being exactly that.
Yeah, because what's your take on this in the fact that I feel like a lot of times when it comes to giving coaches a shot, 3 years seems to typically be the pretty set standard. But that obviously changes when you get down into programs like UTEP, like a Rice, where things are difficult in a recruiting aspect, I feel like, more than anything.
Yeah, I think G4, you got to have that 4th season, or G5, you got to have that. And then, like you said, UTEP and Rice are probably the most difficult jobs in the state, or at least the ones with the most obstacles.
Yeah, because UTEP, just from a location perspective, and then Rice from an academic standpoint.
Right. You go to UTEP and you talk to those guys, and you're like, J.G. and Taylor, their defensive end at UTEP. He's from Lufkin, and then he went to Tyler JUCO before that. I was like, what did you know about El Paso before you came out here? He's like, I knew it was close to Mexico. It shocked him that it was in a different time zone. He's like, I'm calling my mom on a visit, and she's like, what? I thought you were calling me at 3, and he's like, it is 3.
It is 3, yeah, exactly.
And so it's just getting guys out there. I think once you go to El Paso,
all
of
of
us
it.
who have been there, it's like, man, this is pretty cool. This was just big enough. The food's great. You're close to a lot of cool stuff to go do. But you got to get them out there. Most of the football talent, let's be honest, is DFW, Houston, big city talent. It's hard to convince them to come out to El Paso. And then Rice, it's just the academic standards. You're as soon as you walk out of your room to go recruit, at least 60% of the guys on everybody else's list can't be on yours.
Yeah.
And that makes it hard. And so for Bloomgren, we'll talk about him a little bit later as well. I've just never known where to put Rice in terms of
hot seat. Yeah.
It's like, what is that job? What is success? I have no idea.
Right. Yeah.
What David Bailiff did at Rice, like you look back
unheard
on
of.
winning conference championships and stuff like that, and you're like,
how did you do that?
Right.
All right. So that was, we'll pop that up just one more time on our list of cold. Jimbo Fisher, Dave Aranda, Dana Holgerson, Jeff Traylor, Sonny Dykes, Dana Dimmel, Rhett Lashley, and Joey McGuire. Just a lot of new faces there, if anything. We will head on to our next two categories here, which is room temperature and then warm. Warm obviously being a little bit hotter there.
Yeah, the room I think Sark's already kind of, and some of that's the nature of the job. We just talked about how El Paso, you need 4 years. Rice, you probably need 4 years.
Texas they say, one game, and you better be ready to go.
Right. And so what I find interesting about this is that Alabama game in week 2. Because they don't need to win that game. If it's like that Texas LSU game a couple years ago where LSU won the national, I think that was 2019, where it was like 42-35. That was a great game. They lost, but it was like, hey, you're right there with like one of the best SEC teams. If they can do that with Alabama, I think he stays at room temp. But you come off 5-7, and then say Alabama comes into Texas and beats you 42-10.
Yeah.
What? Where are you? Like, I know it's a little early, right? Like 14 games into your tenure, we're already talking about the hot seat. But University of Texas, post Mac Brown, has proven to have a pretty quick,
they've got a
leash, and so it's like where. If they can play well in that Alabama game, I think pressure kind of slips off of them a little bit, especially if they, win 7, 8, 9 games. But if they get blown out against Alabama, it's all of a sudden like, where is this? This is who we're going to have to eventually play against.
I was fixing to say, he does not get any favors given to him with the new conference realignment seemingly on the verge, especially with the move to the SEC. And the other thing about jobs like a Texas, like an A&M, it has always struck me that there are 1 to 2 games a year that decide how much you're on the hot seat, because for Texas, typically, obviously it's different with Alabama this year, you can count that as 2, but typically the Red River rivalry speaks numbers from a fan perspective. You're not going to have for sale signs in your yard. You could literally, most of the time, from a Texas fan perspective, you could probably go 2-9 or 2 and whatever, but as long as you beat OU when you come up to the Cotton Bowl, then it's like, oh, well, he beat OU.
Well, because it gives you hope. It's like, yeah, okay, our season didn't go well, but we beat Oklahoma, we beat Alabama, or we at least stayed there. We beat Baylor, right? We're on the path. We just need to fix X, Y, and Z.
You dropped one to Kansas. Well, just overlook that.
Yeah, you can fix that in the offseason, hopefully, right? When you lose to your rivals, back in the day, A&M, now Oklahoma, you lose a big out-of-conference game. I'm sure game day will be in Austin for Alabama, Texas, right? When you lose those kind of marquee games, it's no longer just your fan base that is like, hey, what's going on in Austin? Now it's the whole nation going, what's going on with Texas? Happening? It's been a decade plus now. Who can turn it around? Every single time, I always like to compare coaching stuff to relationships. You give the next person less rope, right? Every single time you go into a new relationship, it's like, I'm 30 now. I'm not going to wait 2 years to see if this is working or not. Sooner or later.
That's a really good way to put it.
It's like Charlie Strong didn't last very long. Tom Herman didn't last very long. Now Steve Sarkisian's there. He's not going to get as much as those other two, and they didn't get very much at all because it's like, well, we see the signs. And so, it's kind of a put up or shut up year for Texas, which sounds insane being in year 2.
Yeah, and especially after, 1-5-7 season, and it's like, well, and a part of that is because you do have the talent of Bijan Robinson. You have players. It's not like a UTEP situation where you might just not have the players. It's about building culture and players on the roster, and winning will bring in recruits and stuff. This is, you have the recruits. You just have to coach them.
I think I can make an argument that Texas is still the most talented roster in the state, even with A&M bringing in that recruiting class. Maybe in a year when those guys grow up, it changes. But Quinn Ewers is the most talented quarterback in the state. Whether he's good or not this year, I have no idea. But in terms of just arm talent, best in the state. Bijan Robinson,
one
best
of the
running
nation.
back. Bijan Robinson, best in the nation. Xavier Worthy, first round, second round draft pick here in a couple years. Obviously they have offensive line, defensive line issues, and that ends up being really important. But just skill wise, Texas is right there, and there's never an excuse to go 5-7.
No, absolutely not. And the fans down there will absolutely let you know that as well. Then into the warm category. So this was Seth Luttrell was another guy that we put on the hot seat last year and has now moved down, which is just kind of a what are we doing here?
Yeah, maybe he is on the hot seat. I feel, coming out of magazine season, I joked about this. Like, you walk out of every single program during this magazine tour going, man, I bet they're going to be pretty good this year. You know, like there's a
vibe, an energy.
Just that hope, right? Like everybody's 0-0. You know, they end last year on a 5-game losing streak going into the bowl game. And so it's one of those things where I don't know if he's on like the hot seat. I don't think he needs like 8 wins to stay there.
Right.
If he can just make a bowl game.
And win it for once.
Maybe win it. Then that's, you know, end the year with a winning record. You know, whether it's going 7-5 in the regular season, then losing the bowl game, or 6-6 and then winning the bowl game. When you're moving on to the American, and Ish made this point when we were talking about it yesterday, you're moving to a new conference. You want to give that athletic director a reason to keep you around. It's almost guilty till proven innocent, right? Like, prove to me why you need to be our coach when we move into the American. I do feel like they built some momentum last year, and you kind of saw what would work at North Texas. Now they just need to do it again.
Consistently.
Right.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the things is you have good talent in place from a Conference USA perspective. You have a veteran as a defensive coordinator who came back again at Phil Bennett. It's like there should be nothing but consistency at this point in this program.
Got better through the transfer portal.
Yeah, so go do something. Like figuring out the quarterback obviously will be the big one, but if Gunnell can do something, then that's a good thing. But yeah, I think that Seth Luttrell's calling card is winning a bowl game because he just hasn't done it. He has not won a single bowl game in the 6 seasons now that he's been there. And from a Mean Green fan perspective, people hate that. Like, what's the point of rattling off 5 or 6 wins to end the season to get bowl eligible to just go get just slaughtered every time they step into a bowl game scenario? It's frustrating.
Yeah, neither one of our teams have won a bowl game.
No.
Because UTSA also has that similar problem, right? Where you get, and that some of that's Conference USA.
Yeah.
Like you get matched up to these other conferences and you go, oh, it's not that good of a conference.
Yep.
Right. And so that's some of the bowl, you know, like UTSA played San Diego State last year, and I know a lot of important guys were out, but just being on the field an hour before the game, you're like, that's a better team. Like, that's just a different looking team at San Diego State. Conference USA still has a ways to go, and that's why you're seeing North Texas, Rice, UTSA try to get out of there.
Right. Absolutely. And then there's Rice.
Yeah, then there's Rice, you know, and I think he's on the last year of his contract, right? He's been there for a little while. They haven't reached a bowl game. They haven't reached 6 wins. I think that's the hardest job in the state. I would rather have the UTEP job than the Rice job, personally. Even though you're in Houston, I just think it's easier to go recruit JUCO and through the transfer portal. You know, Bloomgren, not only does he kind of have those obstacles of being at Rice, he also has the obstacles of the style of play he tries to run. He doesn't run spread offense, 7-on-7, you know, wide receivers, quarterbacks grow off of trees offense. He tries to play like Stanford old school style, and like there's not as many 6'7", 300-pound tackles as there are good wide receivers. And so you have to go win those games. You can't just trick your way or scheme your way into winning when you're trying to run it in an old school way. I think that's what keeps Rice back, is not only is their recruiting talent pool limited because of the academics, well, it's limited even further because they're looking for players that, you know, frankly, in high school these days aren't running that type of offense.
No.
There's not many guys running I formation with fullbacks and tight ends and running 21 scheme and stuff. You just can't do it. I do like the secondary this year. We joked about that yesterday in the office. I really do. I think the defense is going to be better. So they were 4-8 last year, but 2 of those losses were in overtime. They can go win 6 games. They beat Marshall in 2020. They beat UAB in 2021. They're right there. They can do it. And the jump up in Conference USA isn't huge. We saw UTEP do it. Right? So they can. It's just a matter of being consistent and finding a quarterback. I don't know if they believe in TJ McMahon or Wiley Green at this point.
Well, and for me, it's always been Rice. It seems like every game they have one side of the ball do really well. And not really well, but they do well and they can compete. And then the other side of the ball just plummets. And then it's like the defense will have a fantastic game and then the offense can't even gain a first down. So it's like
depth has been an issue.
Yeah.
And you know, again, coming out of magazine season, everybody believes that this is the best team that they've had, right? Like I didn't go to one school that was like, yeah, we're going to take a step back this year. You know?
You know what? Actually, we're not going to do too well.
But like Bloomgren will say, like, this is the first time I feel like we got it too deep.
Oh, wow.
Like if I lose that guy, I got a guy that can win football, and I did not have that beforehand.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that will help because you're not going to go 12 games through the season, especially when you got to play USC and Houston out of conference to make money, right? You got to win. You got to play those games, right? You're going to pick up a couple injuries, and to have some depth, I think maybe that helps. That's
interesting.
A little bit more.
And then finally, we move on to the one coach here that is absolutely on the hot seat, and that would be Jake Spavital.
Yeah, it hurts me to say because I'm a Spav guy.
Oh, dude, he's great.
You got to win. You got to win. Now, yesterday, Ish and I, and it's out today, did a podcast kind of previewing Texas State, and we had Kef on, who works for the Austin American Statesman, who may be like the most plugged in Texas State reporter there is. Ish went to Texas State. There are obstacles facing Jake Spavital that are not true elsewhere, right? Like they're just now getting full cost of attendance scholarships.
Yep.
Their weight room, they have to have 4 different workout sessions to get one workout in because only a quarter of the team can fit in the weight room.
Damn.
They don't have an indoor practice facility, but San Marcos High School does, right? And so there are reasons that SPAV and Texas State aren't doing as well as maybe you would expect. For me, this is about Texas State. Texas State has to pick if it really wants to do this or not. It spent my entire life trying to be an FBS football team. And then it got there, and then it decided, well, we made it, so
I think we're done now.
Yeah,
goal accomplished.
We're never going to spend any more money again. Like it takes like you saw what UTSA did. Like they found money to keep Jeff Traylor.
Yep.
And in 2020, Texas State was an extra point away from beating UTSA.
Yep.
And since that time, I don't know if the programs could have gone in 2 further different directions. And so for SPAV, when you're going to take the recruiting angle that you do, which is controversial, especially in this state when you're not recruiting high school guys, which I personally think is a smart idea if you're Texas State. But like, if it doesn't work, you're going to take heat. You're not getting to bowl games, and your main rival, at least the one to your student base at UTSA up the road,
just won a conference championship.
Right, has lapped you. Something's got to give. He's got to win, and even if that job is impossible, they're still going to find a scapegoat, and unfortunately that's going to be SPAV if they don't get to at least 6 wins this year.
Well, and we talked about it too, but I think that it wasn't just made known internally in that athletic department. When the new athletic director, for the first time in a long time, he tweeted out like apologizing to the fans at that point, and that's something that you don't see often from usually that's internal conversations that are being had, and for him to bring that out, obviously that's a move pushing his own agenda because he just got hired as an athletic director, so good on him for that. But I think that there was some seriousness behind that Twitter, just the Twitter thing of going, okay, like he's already publicly made it known you're on a short lease, so you better really get to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's bowl game or bust.
Yeah.
It really just is, because like if you're going to build your roster on the transfer portal, those should be quick fixes in theory, right? And now you're about to go into like year 4 of SPAV where it's like, is this the same thing?
Right.
You've gotten all your transfers in here. Each year you bring in 20 new guys that you think is going to fix this roster, and it's not getting fixed. And the Sun Belt's only getting tougher. It's only getting deeper. It's only getting better. Kind of like what we talked about with North Texas and Seth Luttrell. If you want to ride into this new Sun Belt, do you want to do it with the program as it is right now? If we see another 3-9, 4-8 season, I don't think that's true. I think he has to win 6 games. I think he has to get bowl eligible. Maybe they get left out of a bowl game. That's happened to Texas State before, where they've gotten to 6 wins and don't get the bowl game. I don't think he gets fired for that, but he has to have a 500 or better record in the regular season, or they're looking for a new coach.
Because, at that point, then you transfer into a new conference. It's probably a more difficult conference from a talent perspective, and then it's okay. You lost your first 3 games again. Like, now we're going to fire you midseason when we could have just ripped off the Band-Aid and started with a whole new approach. So, well, there it is. I'll put that graphic back up one more time. But it's our Texas college coaches hot seat meter heading into the 2022 season. Most people feel pretty safe with the influx of new coaches, but some that we are keeping our eye on. So he is Mike Craven. Craven, appreciate the time. Thank you for hopping on and joining us.
Of course. Appreciate letting Taco be a star.
Dude, that's the real reason why we let you in here, just so I could be with Taco. Yeah, he's just chilling. Oh, look, you can kind of see his ear. No, there he goes. All right. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you would like more and to be notified when they come out, go ahead and click that subscribe button right down there. You can also watch Texas Football Today every day live at noon on TexasFootball.com, Facebook, Twitch, and right here on YouTube. For more of the best coverage of Texas football in the Lone Star State, go to TexasFootball.com/subscribe.